I have your permission to use this video for my class?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so I just had a question for the interview. Do you believe that zoos are ethical and beneficial to animals?
I believe that the idea of using zoos to educate people about animals and to connect them with animals that they wouldn't normally feel a connection to in the wild is ethical. That being said, I think a lot of things that zoos do right now are not ideal, and that's why we're always working towards making them better.
Okay, so you see that there's room for improvement in the quality of life for the animals.
I think that the principle is ethical, and I think that working towards improving always on what we actually do is our goal.
With more knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, so there is the issue that a lot of people say it actually costs a lot more to maintain an animal's life as opposed to just protecting a wildlife reserve. How do you feel about that?
So I think comparing an animal in the wild and an animal in the zoo, I think an animal in the zoo itself is more costly, but you have to consider that it's not just that animal that you're keeping in mind when you're putting money towards it, it's how that animal educates hundreds and thousands of people who come through the gates, and how that money can go to protecting hundreds and thousands of animals in the wild.
Okay, and so normally animals in zoos are kept solo or in pairs. When in the wild, they're usually in large groups. Do you think that at all is not beneficial to the animal to be in a smaller social group than they would be in the wild?
So animals in zoos ideally are not kept solo. They are ideally kept in the same social dynamics as they are kept in the wild. When you see animals that are singly housed in zoos, it's because they live singly housed in the wild. Animals like orangutans aren't normally social animals, so to house them together would actually cause a lot of stress.
Okay.
I do think, though, that animals who are social in the wild should be housed socially in zoos, and that's something that's not always done in older zoos.
Yeah. So a lot of people would argue that the artificial environments, like murals that they paint to look like the wild, or just kind of like fake plant, or not fake plants, but plants that they kind of plant around to make it seem like they're in the wild. But a lot of people would argue that that doesn't measure up to their normal environment, because as they roam, they see a lot of different environments. Being in the same enclosure can be monotonous and then cause the abnormal behaviors that you can see in a zoo animal.
So I would completely agree that artificial plants and a monotonous setting is not healthy for any animal, and so that is why zoos often try and use horticulture. There's something now called immersion exhibitry, which has blown a lot of zoos out of the water. We're now incorporating exhibits that have the same kind of plant life and species and diversity, and not only now are animals housed in single species, but in mixed species exhibits. So that's the direction that we're shifting to, but I do agree that the monotonous, singly boring exhibits are not good for social and psychological health.
I guess there's a lot of questions about the lifespan of some of the animals being a lot shorter in a zoo enclosure.
So that really depends on species. Most species actually live a lot longer in zoos because they are provided with health care and they don't have to worry about being preyed upon. Those species that do have shorter lifespans in captivity than in the wild, I couldn't even name which ones they are, but say they do exist.
Say an elephant's lifespan was typically 16 to 18 years in the zoo as opposed to 50 to 70.
That's actually interesting. I'm not sure where that fact came from, because I've met elephants in zoos that are 40, 45, or 50.
Okay.
So that's interesting.
Would you say that's more of like a sanctuary type environment, or is it like an actual zoo?
I've never met a sanctuary elephant, so all the ones that I've met who are 40 and 50 have been in zoos.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they were raised in the zoo?
Correct.
So would you argue that maybe you could learn more, so a lot of people would argue that you could learn a lot more about an animal from television programs, reading about them, or watching a video of wildlife. Why do you think that being in the zoo is more beneficial and educational?
So I definitely agree that you can learn a lot of facts about animals via television, books, but there's something about seeing an animal right in front of you and having that experience. And I think going out and doing that in the wild is the best ideal scenario, but you cannot send more people come to zoos than every single sporting event combined annually.
Wow.
And you can't send that many people out into the wild because they're going to ruin the environment.
Yes.
So having that face-to-face connection, I think, is what makes the difference between just knowing the facts and then doing something about it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your
Yeah,
time.
you're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.